And as you're joining, feel free to say hello in the chat. We will get started now. So thank you again for joining us this evening. In the words of our student reporters, welcome to P.S. Weekly. The P.S. Weekly podcast is a collaboration between The Bell and Chalkbeat New York. The Bell is a nonprofit that specializes in audio journalism training for New York City public high school students. And Chalkbeat New York is a nonprofit newsroom covering the essential stories about the nation's largest school system. I'm Amy Zimmer. I am the bureau chief for Chalkbeat New York, and I am so happy to be here with our friends from The Bell. Our collaboration on PS Weekly, we've created this really novel youth adult newsroom, comes at a critical moment. Media literacy feels more important than ever. We have an election coming up, and high school journalism plays a key role, whether you're a student who is working on a school newspaper or reading it. Yet at New York City's high poverty schools, only 7% have a high school newspaper or news site. So it is a critical thing. And, disclosure, I don't know if I would be here today if I didn't have the opportunity to work on my high school newspaper at Forest Hills High School in Queens. So, this is a really important thing to me. I just think youth journalism is so important. Here at PS Weekly, we have 11 high school interns working on the podcast, and they are doing it all. They are the show's hosts, the reporters, producers, sound engineers. They're marketing the show. They are working under the expert guidance of our executive producer, Joanne DeLuna, and are working alongside the Bell team and our Chalkbeat reporters. So I'd like the folks here who are working on PS Weekly to please wave and say hello in the chat. Hello. Not only is our talented crew getting a first-rate journalism education and creating really strong, stellar journalism, but our hope is for their peers to listen to the show and for teachers to share this show with their students. So that's where you come in. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already done so. Please help us spread the word. So for tonight, here's the outline of this evening. First, you'll hear more about what goes into making the show. And then we'll talk about how it can be used in the classroom. The Bell's executive director, Taylor McGraw, who dreamed up this partnership, is a former teacher himself. And finally, we'll answer your questions. So please drop them throughout the evening in the Q&A box, okay? And because we have limited time, we'll have our chat moderator, Mira, selecting questions from the chat for the panelists to answer. And if you have a question that we didn't get to answer tonight, you can email us at it's psweekly@chalkbeat.org. We'll share this contact info again at the end of the webinar. We ask, please stay until the end for some important information, and we have a great session planned for you. So before we get started, I'd also just like to thank the Pinkerton Foundation for their generous support of PS Weekly. And now I will pass the mic to Sabrina from The Bell.
Hi, everyone. Amy, thank you for that introduction. It's really great to see you all. We're really excited. We've been planning this event for a while, and I'm really just happy that we're all here and you guys have taken the time out on, as Amy said, this rainy Wednesday to be with us. So we're looking forward to the rest of this webinar event. So first and foremost, my name is Sabrina. I'm Sabrina Duquesne, and I'm the student program manager here at The Bell. I have been working at The Bell for about 2 years, but my history with The Bell kind of transcends that a little bit. I was a miseducation intern. Miseducation is one of our internship programs that we offer during the school year. And I was an intern when I was in high school, and now I am working full-time, and it's been amazing working with such passionate, awesome students. Words cannot describe how much I enjoy being here. So we are going to go ahead and have some introductions from the panelists who will be speaking today. Specifically, we're going to hear introductions from Joanne, Alex, Taylor, and Mira from our adults. And for our student panelists, we're going to hear some introductions from Christian, Sanaa, Santana, and Dorothy. So I'll first off ask Joanne if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, and then pass it to Alex, Alex to Taylor, and then so forth.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Joanne DeLuna. I'm the executive producer of P.S Weekly. Yeah, that's it. Alex, you're next.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex Zimmerman. I am a reporter at Chalkbeat, New York, and I'm just around to be a resource to the kids as they build the podcast. Taylor?
Hi, everyone. I'm a co-founder and executive director at The Bell, and for the podcast, I'm also one of the executive editors. And I don't know who I'm passing it to.
Oh, to Mira.
And go.
Mira.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mira. I'm the manager of partnerships and operations at The Bell, and I've been engineering our recording sessions for PS Weekly. I'll pass it to Dorothy.
Hi everyone, super excited to be here. I'm Dorothy. I'm a student at Stuyvesant High School, and I'll pass it to Christian.
Hi everyone, I'm Christian. I'm a reporter for PS Weekly with The Bell and Chalkbeat. I am a student at University Neighborhood High School, and I'm gonna pass it to Showa.
Hi everyone, my name is Showa. I'm a senior at Landmark High School, and I'm gonna pass it to Bernie.
Hi, my name is Bernie, and I am currently a junior at the Beacon School in Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan. And I'm not sure who I'm passing it to right now.
Yeah, if we could go to Santana and then Sanaa.
Hey, my name is Santana. I go to Frederick Douglass Academy too, and I'm gonna pass it to Sanaa.
Hi, I'm Sanaa. I go to the Professional Performing Arts High School.
Awesome. And we also have some more students on here. I'm seeing Jose Marcelino. Good to see you guys. And Salma. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. If you guys could turn your cameras off, except for the students who are going to be on the panel for right now. So the students on the panel right now are Sanaa, Christian, Sanaa and Christian. And then if Alex and Joanne could also keep their cameras on. Great. Thanks, guys. All right, so a little bit about The Bell, just, want to kind of front load. The Bell is a nonprofit organization that specializes in audio journalism training for New York City public high school students. So we have been doing this for a few years. As Taylor said, he's the co-founder and executive director, and he co-founded this with Adrian, who is just super awesome guy. And so we offer audio journalism focused internship programs that include our Summer Youth Podcast Academy program that happens around August for 3 weeks, as well as our school year miseducation program and our new program, PS Weekly, that we are currently doing in collaboration with Chalkbeat. So we're really excited to talk a little bit more about how the podcast works, and just a little bit more about the origin story of how it came to be and how it's made. So first and foremost, I am going to go ahead and ask Dorothy, our PS Weekly student reporter, to explain a little bit. Dorothy, if you can talk about how does a PS Weekly episode come to life, and what are the steps for that?
Yeah, of course. So I'll just talk a little bit about production. So I remember all the way back in January, that was when we were first asked to pitch topics for the podcast. So each one of us pitched our own topics about what we were interested in, so that each of those topics could be made into a full-length episode. And that was really exciting for me, and I'm sure it was very exciting for all of my co-producers as well. We got feedback on our pitches from all of the reporters at Chalkbeat. And yeah, I just think that's a testament to how PS Weekly is representative of the New York City student body. Yeah, PS Weekly really allowed us to all contribute our voices and do episodes about what we were interested on. And from there, we decided on the topics that we were going to do, and we built a very structured editorial calendar with set deadlines for every episode, so that we would be able to, stay on track, and we wouldn't have to have too much work piled up for us at once. And so we could have an efficient schedule going and have an efficient posting schedule for our episodes, of course. And in terms of production, we have two production teams. So the cohort is split into two teams, and each of those teams has a few roles. So there are the producers, there's the host, there's the marketer, and there's the audio engineer. So for each segment, the producers help to identify sources, book interviews, and then draft questions for aforementioned interviews. They help to conduct those interviews. And then once those interviews are done, they'll take the recordings from those interviews and cut the tape of those recordings. They'll write the script around the tape, and then they'll line up the clips in Hindenburg, which is the audio engineering software that we use to produce our episodes. And once those clips are in Hindenburg, we pass the project off to Joanne, who is our lovely executive producer. Yeah. And so for the host writes the episode intro and transitions, and of course, hosts the episode, makes it really flow. For the marketer collects visual assets being photographs and videos from production, whether those be headshots of interviewees or photographs from the process of actually making the episode. The marketer also drafts the title and the promotion language and promotes our podcast to any other projects who might want to promote it and get our name out there. And for the audio engineer also works on Hindenburg, collecting sound effects and designing a soundscape that really makes the episode come to life. So yeah, that's how PS Weekly is made.
Thanks so much, Dorothy. You explained that beautifully. And just as Dorothy was saying, PS Weekly is a weekly show. We come out with an episode every Wednesday. I don't know if you guys know, but today is Wednesday, so that means an episode is out. And we are definitely encouraging you all to just subscribe to the podcast, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But our students, they work so hard. They come in Tuesdays and Thursdays to our lower financial district office location, and just continuously just work and rotate in roles that Dorothy just described. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our questions at this time for some more students, specifically Sana. So Sana, you were a co-producer for episode 1, which is titled Migrant Students Navigate a New Reality. So right now we're going to go ahead and play a clip for everybody. And then Sana, I want you to talk about your role and some exciting things that you did for this episode.
Mike, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Dorothy, it's great to be here.
All right, so Mike, when did the issue that some have called the migrant crisis hit your radar?
So I remember back in summer 2022, when this was first hitting the headlines, I was watching a meeting and a superintendent said, we're expecting a couple hundred new students to come in. And I was like, whoa, that seems like a lot of kids. And then here we are about 2 years later, and it's a whole lot more than that.
Right, so now it's 2024, and how many people are we talking about in total now?
So our best estimate is that about 36,000 new kids have enrolled over the past couple years.
So, yeah, so I know you guys heard Dorothy's voice just now, as she was the host of the episode, but Sana helped to just co-produce this. So Sana, could you tell us a little bit about your role in episode 1 and how, what are some exciting things that you did for this episode, even just kind of considering the clip that we just played?
Okay. Well, as co-producer, I got to draft questions and book interviews and write scripts around what the interviewers would say. And I'd say the most exciting process of this episode for me was reaching out to who I'd be interviewing. And it also helped me learn that, like, if I have a set idea of what the podcast is going to be, it might not be that. It might change depending on who I might interview and what they have to say to me. And it was just a very good learning process for me, learning to go with the flow and go with what the interviewees tell me about their experiences.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Sana. And then now I want to move on to our next student, Christian. So Christian, you are the producer for the episode that just dropped today, episode 4, a high schooler who works at Bloomberg, plus shotgunning college applications. So we're gonna go ahead and play a clip. And then Christian, I want you to talk through your role and tell us some exciting things that you did for this episode. So let's play that clip. All right. I'm gonna be checking with one. I think I can go ahead and play.
Are you hearing the clip?
We're not hearing the clip.
Okay, my sound sharing stopped. I will restart that.
How are high schoolers dealing with the age-old question? What's next? Today, you'll hear from 2 seniors, one who's putting the earn and learn through a new career-focused program, and another who took the college application game to a new level. With our first story, here's P.S Weekly producer, Christian Rojas Linares.
Good morning. It is currently 7:17 a.m. I am picking out my outfit of the day and decided to go with my favorite gray flared pants.
This is Heidi Torres, a high school junior at the Brooklyn Academy of Global Finance.
I would get to school, go through daily school routine, my classes, and I would leave at 12:10 on the dot, and then I would take the train. And from there, I would get to Bloomberg around 1 o'clock.
Bloomberg, the global financial and media giant headquartered in Midtown Manhattan.
Hello, it is currently 1:24. I am with my fellow apprentice, Kayla. Hi, guys. We are going to start work at exactly 1:30, which we will be taking on tickets and working with their issues.
4 afternoons a week, Heidi switches outfits from student to employee and works on Bloomberg's internal help desk.
All right. So Christian, if you could go ahead and tell us a little bit about some exciting things that you did in the role for that episode.
The first thing that comes to mind when it comes to the episode, I was very excited to talk about the college application, as that's been a very hot topic lately within the education system. Also, another thing is similar to Sana, I was looking forward to reaching out to people from CareerWise New York, which is the program that hosts the apprenticeships that students can be able to work with. For example, in that clip, you heard a student working at Bloomberg. And I also enjoyed working with my mentor. So we each have mentors that we work with and meet with once a week to help us with our scripts or whatever it is that we're working on. So, for example, my mentor is Mark, and luckily enough, Mark is actually here with us today. So shout out to you, Mark Pagan. And so another thing that I am really excited about was just learning the overall process of what it's like to do a professional podcast, in a sense, because sometimes things didn't really go my way. For example, we were supposed to interview a student at MasterCard, however, that didn't fall into place. So it's just about relearning about readjusting and seeing what comes next and working your way there.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, thanks so much, Christian, for sharing that. So Christian, Sanaa, thank you guys both. So right now, I have a question for Joanne. Hi, Joanne. Good to see you. So, Joanne, you obviously have a very important role in this project. We've seen it, and we'd love to know what are some of the moments that stick out to you in these past 3 months, as you've been bringing this show to life.
There's been so many, honestly. I'm just so impressed with the students and their ability to just roll with everything that we've been throwing at them, everything that the journalism gods have been throwing at them, as you've heard. Things don't always go according to plan, and they've just been able to like pivot and come up with backup sources and just everything. And as you can imagine, making a weekly show is not easy, even for adults who have years of professional experience. And so for these students to just come in, they're fairly new. Some of them have done a little bit of podcasting before, but to produce a weekly show with multiple segments and multiple interviews per segment is a big task. And we only get them for about 4 hours a week. So we're doing all this in such a short timeline, such a short amount of time, and they're doing so good. Like, I'm constantly impressed by them. I love our first episode. If you haven't listened, we have Jose doing interviews in Spanish. We have Sanaa doing voiceovers for that interview in Spanish. We have a professional interview with a Chalkbeat reporter that sounds like the New York, the Daily podcast. We have students and teachers' perspectives. Like, it's so jam-packed. And we initially almost didn't have that episode because it was so difficult to get the people that we wanted to interview. And then, of course, everybody got back to us at the last minute. And the students were there to cut tape super fast. I've been so impressed and amazed at the student reporters' reflections in terms of like learning from their mistakes and also what they can improve next time. And we're already seeing that growth. Some of them are starting on their second piece already, and it's already an improvement. And it's just so beautiful to watch them grow as reporters, as producers. And it's been really beautiful to just watch them work together as a team. I'm just constantly hearing them say, I got you, don't worry. Like, when somebody can't do something, somebody else really quickly volunteers and steps up. And they're really role models for us adults, like imagine we had that in our newsrooms. It's just amazing. They're doing an incredible job.
Thanks for sharing, Joanne. And I just gotta say, I completely agree with everything you just shared. I mean, we see these students on Tuesdays and Thursdays only for 4 hours, as Joanne said, but they work so immensely hard. And the passion that they have, it's just palpable when we come into our little meetings, and the teamwork there. I think we've definitely formed family bonds in this PS Weekly internship program. So. Alex, I have a question for you now. So if you could actually go ahead and talk to us about the work that you and the Chalkbeat team do behind the scenes, because Alex comes in to the office on the days that we're in. So it's really awesome to have your support. So if you could talk about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. It's really good to be here. So as Darcy kind of laid out earlier, the student reporters are really driving this process, right? From pitching to conducting interviews and editing. So we have in Chalkbeat New York, we have a staff of 3 reporters and Amy, who's our bureau chief. And our work behind the scenes is generally to kind of act as a guide for the student reporters, as kind of like the resident like education journalism experts. So we might kind of like work with them to brainstorm their story ideas and make sure they're feasible within the pretty tight time constraints they're dealing with. We might give them suggestions of who to talk to. Like, the students do a really good job of identifying the kinds of sources they want to talk to, and sometimes we'll offer input about how to get connected to them, or maybe one of us knows someone at a school who could help them get connected to a student, those kinds of things. And then we're also sort of involved in the editing process too. So helping to edit scripts, looking over interview questions, and providing feedback. And also just like being on hand to answer questions about like journalism best practices. So like one question that came up recently was, they got a request from a city official who was asking them to like share their questions for an interview in advance, which is something that comes up all the time. So we were sort of just chatting about like how you might be able to like share some of the topics in advance without like totally giving away like all of the questions you want to get to. Another kind of feature of this collaboration that I think makes it pretty unique is we're also always looking for opportunities for the student journalists and the Chalkbeat journalists to collaborate together on the reporting process. So in one example, like my colleague Julian worked on a story with Tanvir, one of the student journalists, about a class at her school that focuses on banned books. So Tanvir sort of took the lead on reporting out the podcast episode, but then they ended up producing like a written piece that got published in Chalkbeat together. And another kind of example of that is like yesterday, I went on a reporting trip with Ava, another one of our student reporters, to the DOE's school food test kitchen. So keep your ears open for that in a future episode. But yeah, it's been a really exciting way of sort of collaborating on an end kind of journalism project with student reporters.
That's awesome, Alex. And I got a follow-up for you. What have you enjoyed? I know you spoke a little bit about, just some sort of the unique parts of this collaboration, but what have you enjoyed most about this collaboration?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's most fun for me is just working with students who are really hungry and really excited to do good journalism. I'm an education reporter. I've been at Chalkbeat for I think about 8 years now. I've been to a lot of schools, but these students are in schools every day and just have really sharp insights about their experience. In one example, like we were just having kind of a casual conversation, and a student brought up this concern about like equity and access to microwaves in school cafeterias, which is just like something that you would only really think about if you were a student sort of needing to heat up your lunch every day and like struggling with that. But I think like the most fun thing, honestly, is just like watching them get results and impact. Like Tanvir and Julian's story got republished by Apple News, just like a really huge platform for their story. Ava, who I mentioned earlier, her story about challenges getting special education accommodations, got noticed by an official in the city's independent budget office who reached out to us and was sort of interested in talking more about those issues. And I think like top city officials are really taking notice of the journalism that students are producing, which is just really gratifying to see. Like the students have already landed huge interviews. They interviewed the head of the school system, school's chancellor, David Banks, and they also landed an interview with the city's health commissioner. Like these are just really important officials who are getting pressed on really key topics by student journalists who are doing their homework.
Absolutely. And no, thank you for sharing, Alex. And just as Alex said, we actually have an episode, a special one coming out. Our students got the chance to interview David Banks, the chancellor. So definitely subscribe to our podcast so you could hear that episode and check it out when it comes. So right now I have a final question specifically for the folks who just spoke. So Sanaa, Christian, Joanne, and Alex, if you guys could answer this question of what is your hope for the show as we continue? Yeah, so I guess I'll start. I can start with Christian. Yeah.
Something I'd like to have the show produce, and the outcome of it is sort of bring light to these issues and make change. For example, like Alex was saying with the IEPs and Ava, of them being invited to come down. And I think we're really starting to see these changes, and I hope it continues to be like that. So I just really have high hopes for the show and the expectations for it.
Thank you, Christian. Oh, and I also Dorothy as well.
Yeah, I mean, just bouncing off of Christian, I just have really high hopes for this podcast outreach. I really do hope that this podcast is able to reach students in particular and inspire them to pursue journalism for their own schools, because as Amy mentioned before, not all high schools have journalism initiatives or newspapers. So I hope that this inspires them to go after that.
Thanks, Dorothy. I think you guys are inspiring a lot of people. Yeah. Sana.
I hope that other students feel seen in our podcast episodes, and I hope that this also like inspires them to talk about issues that they're facing in school and know that they're able to speak about those and hope for change.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Sana. And would love to head over to Alex and then Joanne.
Yeah, I know, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about this later on, but I'm really hopeful that like some of these episodes like spark conversations inside schools, and I'm kind of excited about the work that we're doing to like help create like guides for schools and teachers in terms of like using some of this in classrooms. Like I'm really hopeful about that.
And
Yeah, I really hope people listen because the reporting is so good. I'm not just saying that because, I helped make the podcast, but like it's so good. The students have, their finger on the pulse of like what the conversations are doing, are happening in the schools. And it's just, yeah, I want people to know, students as well, that, this is possible. Your students, you can also be reporting on stories like this. And I would also love more interaction with our audience, and that hopefully grows, and like have you guys be featured in some ways, whether that's through like voice notes that we're going to play on the air, or have us pitch stories that you can help report, or we can have our own students report, and just more of a collaboration and community building with our podcast.
Thank you, Alex and Joanne. And just like Joanne was saying, we'd love to continue interacting with you guys. So yeah, continue dropping all of those questions in the chat. Our Q&A portion will be coming up after part 2 of our panel, which we're actually going to head into right now. So Alex and Joanne, I'll see you guys later. All right. And then now I'm going to bring on Taylor and Santana. Ooh, what's up, team? All right, sweet. So right now, part 2 of this panel, we are going to have a conversation, which I think, this is going to be the part where we learn about how podcasts can be used in the classroom and as a teaching tool. So the first question I have, also, I would love for Christian to come on as well. Hey, Christian. Ooh, good to see you. All right. Nice. So Christian, this first question is actually for you. So if you could tell our audience about the reaction to PS Weekly from your teachers and peers. What's that been like?
My teachers and principals, so all the faculty are very surprised and also excited for my future, but also for the show's future, because they've listened to it and they think it's really good. I've also had some classmates come up to me in class and ask me, hey, when can I get on this podcast? Or is it possible if I can get on this podcast? And honestly, I think it's very great to see, students wanting to be engaged within the communities and issues within the New York City School Department of Education.
Absolutely. Yeah. I get that. I remember that question. When I get on the podcast, you doing a podcast? Thanks for sharing though, Christian. It's awesome. And Santana, I'm gonna head to you now. Same question of how has the reaction to PS Weekly been from like your teachers and peers? And if you could like share any like specific stories or anything along those lines from
Sure.
memory. Yeah.
Before I even announced PS Weekly, my assistant principal saw the Chalkbeat article, and she immediately like took a photo of it and then printed it out and pasted it on the door of her office. So it was really funny because she caught me before I was even able to announce it to the school. After that, many of my peers started to ask me questions like, how did I get involved? What the process is like? And even today, after like posting it on episode 4, which released today, you guys should tune in. Someone on my Instagram, they replied and was like, oh, I know one of the students you interviewed. And I was just like, there's no way. But yeah, my principal is extremely enthusiastic about it. He even announced it during a school assembly. And the students that I interviewed for some of the episodes that are released, they're like, I love being interviewed when we're gonna do it again, just like Christian had said. And yeah.
Thanks so much, Santana and Christian, for sharing. I would love to hear like one more student. Jose, could you come off mute and come on camera and share like what your administration has also stated? Yeah, or
Yeah,
which
of course.
years? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my administration has been very, very supportive um of just like me participating. Uh, my head of school, she actually just this morning, she was asking like, "Hey, how's it been going?" Um, and my principal definitely like helped me in the process of like, especially for episode 1, going to Claremont International High School. I had to get permission to leave, and like they were really supportive throughout all of it. So I'm really grateful for that. And yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Jose. And I know I'd love to go through all the students, but I know we got to keep it moving. But we've had a lot of positive just feedback on these episodes because they're doing just such an amazing job. So now I'm actually going to move on to Taylor. And yeah, so Taylor was a former teacher. I don't know if you could tell, but he was, yeah. So Taylor, you can kind
What
of
does
go.
that mean? Don't know if you could tell.
I see it in the shoulders. Taylor and I have known each other since I was in high school and teen. We were baby faced, we were just, youthful and all of that. Now we're getting older, but would love to hear, Taylor, for the audience, if you could tell us, how can current teachers use the podcast in their classrooms? Yes.
Definitely. Well, I'll say when I was teaching, I taught younger kids, I taught 5th grade, but one of the highlights every single day in my 5th grade classroom was when we played, it was like a 10-minute news segment that CNN did. I don't know if I see Santana nodding. I don't know, maybe they're still doing it, but it was literally the highlight. Students loved it because it was catered to them. It was news with like a youthful angle. And I think that's exactly what PS Weekly is, but it's even more localized, right? These are issues that students confront every single day in the school system. And so to any teachers who are listening tonight, I would really encourage you to get this out to your students and have them listen and engage with it. This can be an academic tool. These episodes are rigorous. These are nonfiction texts that students could listen to. We've got the transcripts available online. They could annotate them and analyze them and discuss them in class. We actually, we have not made them public just yet, but pretty soon we're going to be posting listening guides that are designed for students for each episode. So there'll be pre-listening questions, post-listening questions, response questions where we sort of prompt students to reflect on what they learned and offer their own ideas about it. And so lots of ways that you can use it in your classroom. The main message that I want to share is to teachers is to get in touch with us. There's an email that we'll drop in the chat now, maybe, and throughout the evening, psweekly@chalkbeat.org. We would love to hear from teachers about either how you are using it, how you'd like to use it, and offer some tips. And I think our students here are probably the best ones that can do that as students who are in the classroom. And then finally, I'll just say that one of my hopes for the show is that it inspires other students to do their own podcasts, right? To experiment with these new mediums and tell their own stories. And so I think that this could be a great tool of inspiration to get students thinking about projects that they can take on in their own school communities.
Man, that mute button. But thanks for sharing that, Taylor. So I actually want to kind of jump off of that. Santana and Christian, do you guys have any additional suggestions? And I also want to just open this up also just to any other student who's here of how PS Weekly can be used in the classroom. So sort of thinking about your own classes. Yeah, just kind of reflecting on that. Do you guys sort of from your own perspective of how that could work?
Well, absolutely. I do remember CNN 10 back in middle school. That's pretty funny. But whether in a classroom we're learning about, like for episode 2, we talked about banned books, and episode 4 about college process, the college worries, especially this year with a delayed FAFSA, which got every senior going out of their mind. This podcast is for you, for seniors, for all high school students, administrators, adults. And of course, our aim is to inform and to challenge and to question policy, but also we want to bring light to, youth journalism and the future of journalism. And this has been a really incredible experience for me. And for this to be in a classroom, I think it'd be really enlightening because we have in my school personally, we've used a podcast in my government class, and that has been a great resource for me. So I think especially including like PS Weekly, the voice of the youth and the voice of youth journalism, it's really powerful work, and we worked really hard on it, and it's very informative. So I think it'd be a really valuable asset to the New York City schools and schools around the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know we're New York based, but I definitely believe that we're touching across the nation and maybe in some other countries too. Taylor, you can confirm on that?
We get the analytics for the show and it tells where people are listening from. And I can confirm that we're international. We've got, I think, listeners in 20 or 30 different countries.
Yeah. All righty. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Santana. And then does any other student have a suggestion for how the podcast could be used in the classroom? And you could go ahead and just like raise your hand. Okay, Sama, I see you.
Hi, Sabrina. I do want to add on because I think that especially with the topics that we cover, I think Santana had a really good point about policy. But one thing that's unique about having the podcast in classrooms is that it's student reported. So the language, the references made, even if they're cheesy, they're all supposed to appeal to a young audience. And I think that makes it very easy to start conversation and just civic discussion in classrooms, which is on the decline. So topics like the migrant crisis, like banned books, they're not extremely complex. They're not out of touch because it's students who are telling the story. And that gets young people to think. And it's easy for teachers to build off of that and make their classrooms a space where students can talk about anything, can be open-minded. And it sets forth like a good precedent as to what a classroom can be. It's my opinion.
Absolutely. Thank you. Very well said, Salma. For students, by students. Yeah, so thanks, Salma. And I'm actually going to go ahead and head back to you, Taylor. So do you want to tell our audience how they can possibly contribute to the show? Yep.
Yeah, I can make a plug and then others can add on. I think in most episodes, maybe in every episode so far, there's been a call out, like a host sort of saying, "Hey, high school seniors, we want to hear from you. What was your your college application process like?" So like you can listen to the podcast and listen for those questions and then reply through that email address. These teacher guides are also going to have a specific question for each episode that are sort of catered towards a classroom setting and getting students to either write something like a paragraph response. But what we'd really love is record voice memos. We're a podcast, and so if it's not audio, we can't use it. If it's text, we can have somebody read it, but we'd rather hear it in y'all's voice. And so anybody who wants to comment on what they're hearing in the episodes, offer their own experience with the issues that we're covering, just record a voice memo and send it to psweekly@chalkbeat.org. We've put out the call. We haven't gotten that many. And so we'd really love to hear what you guys are thinking and have to say. And I would say your chances are probably pretty good of making it into a future episode. if you do that. So really encourage y'all to engage that way.
Absolutely. And thanks, Amy, for dropping that in the chat. That is the email. Please email us with those voice memos. We'd love to hear them. So thank you guys. I just want to thank all our panelists today. You guys have done just a really stellar job at sharing. And right now I want to open the floor for Q&A. I'm actually going to pass it to Mira to get started on just those audience questions so we can answer those.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for all your great questions so far. I'm gonna get to as many of them as possible, so please keep them coming. All right, for our first question, from Mia. Mia says, I want to ask you how you strike a balance between being timely with newsy stories and also finding the time to make such wonderful documentary style short features. So I wanted to toss that to Joanne. How do we sort of strike that balance?
Yeah, this is something that we actually discussed a lot, just realizing that it is the very first time that The Bell has done anything like this, a weekly show, which I mentioned is already really difficult to do. And, I think like a regular professional team who's working on a weekly show, it probably takes you about maybe 2 weeks. It's taking us about 4 to 5 weeks to do an episode. And so it is kind of difficult to be so breaking news, and the closest thing that we can aim for is kind of having like the news bulletin at the top of some of the episodes that we have. But otherwise, I feel like the topics that we've been covering are very timely and ongoing. We've been dealing with the migrant crisis for years now in New York City. And so it's still a topic that is very top of mind. And then the students just did such a great job of like finding incredible people to interview and give us those perspectives of what it's really like in terms of being like documentary style.
We have a question from Ellie, who asked to the panelists, is there anything about the process of podcast production that you found unexpected or surprising? And I wanted to give this one to Salma first.
Okay, what immediately came to mind was the role of producer and just the amount of audio engineering that has had to be done. Personally, this is my first time working in audio. I'm a print person. So when I did my interview and then I had to narrow it down from like an hour and a half to 12 minutes, that was a huge challenge. And using these different audio platforms, that was unexpected. But I think the challenge has been very beneficial, so I will not complain.
Awesome. And Shoa, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was also thinking about this and the role of being producer. I think that was really difficult for me, especially. I remember the first time that I got the role of producer, there was like a really quick change in the story. So I had to go from one reporting plan to the next. And that wasn't really something that I'm used to, but you get the job done and it's fine. And like it just teaches you that journalism is kind of like you have to kind of always be moving and you'll eventually get it done. Like it's hard, but it's worth it at the end.
You guys are doing an amazing job. Next question. This one actually was from the Zoom sign up, but why is combining student education and learning journalism important? And I wanted to know if Ava could take this.
Yeah. Well, generally speaking, I think it's really important to kind of use journalism as a tool in education because a lot of what students learn in school is based on history or what's happened in the past or kind of curriculums determined by the state that have been taught for a really long time. But journalism is something really current. And I think it's so important for students to learn about what's happening in the world in real time because the issues that students experience are being covered in the news. It's important for students to kind of understand that there are ways that they can use their voice or the voices of people who are young can actually lead to change. So journalism is just something really important, and I think it's really important that both education makes it into the news and that young people learn from the news.
Definitely. Thank you, Ava. I'm going to pose this next question to Alex. Simon is asking, I'm wondering if the New York City Department of Education played a role in the production of the podcast, and if so, how did you work with them to make the podcast happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Simon. So the short answer is that the DOE doesn't play like a formal role in creating the podcast. Like we're totally editorially independent. They're not involved in like deciding what topics we cover or anything like that. Like we do all of that on our own. They may be involved to the extent that like they would be in a normal journalism process where we'll reach out to them for comment if we're including something in a story that we think they need to respond to, we need them to respond to, or if there's like a specific official we want to interview, we'll reach out to them to see if we can set up an interview. But aside from that, the student reporters are, fully independent. They're making their own calls about what they want to cover and producing it.
Great. And I'm going to pose this next question to Bernie. What do you think has been the hardest role to play on the podcast team?
Thank you, Mira. The first thing that came to mind was pretty much just not knowing what's going to happen ahead of the production process. I think while working on these podcast episodes, I've definitely I the future was not expected, and I think working on all these documents and script writing and even being just the host of it can just be all a process that is always changing. I think I remember in the first episode we had a lot of trouble just finding different people to interview, and it's very difficult for that outreach to happen and for people to respond. And I think that kind of improvising that, it kind of unified the group as a whole. So I feel like that was the most difficult part, not knowing, but I think that also provided us with a learning experience as well.
Thank you, Bernie. This last question I'm going to pose to Sabrina and Jose. From Maggie, I'm curious how you go about getting inspiration for the episodes and choosing what to focus on each week.
Yep. So I guess I could I want to let Jose go first. Jose?
Well, in terms of the episode, like the main central topic for each episode, as was mentioned earlier at the beginning of the program, we all, with our student brains and our experiences in schools already, we pitched ideas, and they were reviewed by like the Chalkbeat team, by everyone. And so basically the ideas that we all pitched were translated into the actual episodes that we're producing every single week. And of course, right, depending on like what is actually new, what are topics that are actually relevant in today's day and age. And yeah, that's pretty much in terms of the central topics, how we decided on those.
Absolutely. Just like Jose said, we did have a sort of general pitching session in the beginning of the program, where we all just kind of like, came together and just kind of brainstormed different ideas of what we could cover. And I also just wanted to kind of say that, we would love for audience members, for you guys to definitely pitch us your ideas that we could potentially cover for an episode. We are extremely just open to hearing that. So far, we've actually gotten some emails from folks in the past about things they would like for us to cover, and we take that into consideration and discuss it with the Chalkbeat team. So yeah, we love for more ideas. But we do have Joanne has mapped out this very I can see it right now in my head. It's a very well structured production schedule. It can be a little overwhelming if you look at it for a second, but once you kind of get into it, you're like, okay. So yeah, we're always open to additional ideas. But we do got some great episodes coming up, and we're in the process of working on those. So
Thank you. Yeah, I think that is all we have time for in the Q&A, but I want to encourage the students and all the panelists, if you have any more responses to the questions in the Q&A box, you can chat, reply to them. And I'll pass it back to Sabrina now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually we have a teaser of the upcoming episode. It's a special episode with Chancellor Banks. So our students, I actually want to have one of our students who was there. So Jose, could you tell us a little bit about how the bit about that experience? And then I also would like Shoa to talk about that as well. Yeah.
Sorry, can you say the first part again? It
Oh
cut
yeah,
out
could
for
you?
me.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, if you could tell, you and Shoa, if you guys could tell us a little bit about how the experience was interviewing Chancellor Banks, and just talk a little bit about the highlights for you for that. Oh yeah, so I guess Jose can go first and then Shoa after. Yeah.
I think Jose froze. Maybe Shoa can go.
We froze. Okay, Shoa, you go.
Yeah, so I remember initially on the day of, I was super nervous about it. I was kind of I texted Sabrina. I was like, I need some motivation. But I don't know. I was just really nervous because I've never interviewed someone like him before. And it was like pretty professional. There was the cameraman and we were all sitting around, the microphone in front of him. So initially I was very nervous. But as we eased into it and as Jose and I were asking the questions, he was a really easy person to talk to, and he talked a lot and added on to all of the questions. But um, yeah, it was initially a very scary process, but then it turned it turned very conversational, and I'm sure that when this episode is out, it's gonna be really good and it's gonna sound amazing. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Shola. And when I tell you guys, like they did such an amazing job. Oh my goodness, I can't wait for y'all to hear it. All right, Jose, on to you.
Yeah, I second everything Shoa said. And I mean, yeah, it was a really first time I ever done something like this. And yeah, definitely like once we got into it, once we started the questions, it really started to flow. And I'm also really grateful for Julian, one of the Chalkbeat reporters that was there, and gave us some tips, some advice that really helped us uh, to just get the hang of it. And yeah, really excited for you guys to hear it. I love how it all turned out, and yeah, shout out to the other students that were there as well.
Um, Thanks so much, Shoa and Jose. And the other students that were there, Santana was capturing some awesome footage that we got to use and we're gonna, definitely promote. And Sanaa was recording. She was our producer and she recorded and cut the tape. She cut down a lot of that tape. Chancellor Banks, he could talk. So yeah, y'all are awesome for that. So I know we got like 2 more minutes. So Mira, if you could actually go ahead and play the teaser clip for the Banks episode. We'd love to give you guys a little taste of what's to come.
Our team sat down with Chancellor David Banks himself.
What is a fun fact that most people don't know about Chancellor Banks? I would say, watch this. I've never said this to anybody.
Until then,
Class dismissed.
All right. Ooh, they got me there now. All right. So yeah, we would love if you all could if you guys have your phones, I'll let this be just a call to action. We can do this action step together. Pull out your phones and subscribe to PS Weekly on whatever podcast app you have, if you have not already. And we would love to hear from y'all. So please go ahead and email us. Feel free to send us voice memos or anything like that. We'd love to hear from everybody. So subscribe to PS Weekly. You could do it on Apple or Spotify. And please follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is @BellVoices, and the Chalkbeat Instagram handle is @chalkbeat.org. So thank you all for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. And yeah, hope you guys have a great evening and enjoy the rest of Wednesday. It's raining all.
Class
All right. Thanks,
dismissed.
guys. Class is, ooh, we should all just yell class dismissed. Okay, not bugging. But all right, guys. Ooh.